While returning home from an evening class, she noticed something unusual. The mark on her left shoulder was glowing through her clothes in the dark. I want to take this moment to appreciate each and every one of you for always watching, liking, and commenting on my stories. Your support means the world to me. I promise to keep bringing you nothing but the best stories. A big shout out to all my new followers. Welcome. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, thank you for joining us. We love and appreciate you, so please stay with us for more amazing content. Once upon a time in a village in Adansaman, there lived a wealthy couple named Mr. and Mrs. Somia. Mr. Somia owned the largest farm in the village, and his wife was the only one who operated a mini supermarket. They had 6 beautiful children, 5 boys and 1 girl. They had always wished for a baby girl and kept trying until they finally had one. They named her Zella. Zella was an intelligent and beautiful girl. She was energetic and full of life, which wasn't surprising since she grew up among her brothers. She never mingled with other girls and was always seen playing with boys. She was the pride of her family. At the age of 7, her mother noticed a mark on her left shoulder, close to her heart. It was a shiny, golden brown color, making it highly visible against her dark skin. Her father, worried that it could be a sign of a health issue, insisted on taking her to the hospital. Mrs. Somia, however, laughed at the idea, pointing out that Zella was perfectly healthy. Nevertheless, they traveled several miles across 3 villages to see a doctor. After an examination, the doctor assured them that it was merely a birthmark and nothing to worry about. When Zella turned 12, she experienced a significant moment in her life, and the entire village celebrated, as it was customary. However, Zella's celebration was more extravagant than usual. 2 weeks after the celebration, while returning home from an evening class, she noticed something unusual. The mark on her left shoulder was glowing through her clothes in the dark. She was so shocked and in awe that she touched it, making it glow even brighter. Suddenly, she felt weak and passed out. A couple returning from their farm found Zella unconscious and took her home. Her family was deeply concerned. After she regained consciousness, she ate dinner and went to bed, confused and scared. Later that night, she wept in her sleep, prompting her mother to wake her. Zella's body was so hot that they had to place ice packs on her to cool her down. Finding the situation strange, her parents took her to the hospital again, but the doctors couldn't determine the cause of her rising body temperature. She was admitted overnight for observation, but was discharged the next day. A few days later, Zella and her siblings were roasting corn in the evening, their favorite post-dinner snack. She accidentally touched a hot corn cob, and suddenly, her left shoulder emitted a powerful spark of light that startled her brothers. She dropped the corn and rushed into the house, where the glowing immediately stopped. Her brothers, stunned, followed her inside. When their parents asked what had happened, the boys couldn't recall anything. Zella, realizing that touching her mark caused strange occurrences, locked herself in her room and wept. The next day, fearing embarrassment, she layered multiple clothes under her uniform to prevent any glowing. However, she was so anxious that she decided not to go to school and stayed home instead. When her mother found her in her room, Zella tried to explain everything, even attempting to recreate the glowing effect, but nothing happened. Her mother dismissed her claims, thinking she was making up excuses to avoid school. 3 years passed, and the mysterious glow persisted. After finishing school, Zella wanted to start her own business like her mother, but her father insisted she learn sewing since the village had only one tailor, Mr. Nkubi. Mr. Nkubi agreed to train her. Next to Mr. Nkubi's house stood a grand castle owned by a wealthy miner named Mr. Adonteng. He was a widower with a son named Ato. Rumors circulated that Mr. Adonteng had caused his wife's disappearance and forbade his son from mingling with villagers. Ato was homeschooled and never interacted with anyone. Zella was a quick learner and soon became so skilled that she even introduced new ideas to Mr. Nkubi. 3 months into her apprenticeship, she was given keys to the shop, opening and closing it daily. Every evening, she burned unwanted fabric scraps at the back of the shop. One day, Atto, watching from his window, noticed her shoulder glowing through her dress as she burned the scraps. Unsure if it was a trick of the fire, he kept observing her every evening, mesmerized by the sight. This became the only time Atto felt happiness since his mother's absence, and his father, noticing the change, refrained from investigating. After 2 months, Atto even started eating dinner by the window, eagerly waiting for Zella's routine. One evening, as Zella was burning scraps, a snake crept up behind her. Atto shouted, "There's a snake behind you!" Startled, she jumped, and the snake slithered away. When she turned to thank him, she asked, "Have you been staring at me?" Embarrassed, Atto shut his window and ran into his room. Curious, Zella started looking for Atto throughout the day, but never saw him again. Weeks passed, and they didn't see each other. One evening, after a heated argument with his father, Atto went to his window to vent. To his surprise, Zella was there, burning scraps. He shouted, Where have you been?" she asked. "Have you been waiting for me?" Atto brought out a rolling ladder, and Zella climbed up to meet him. They talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories. As their bond grew, Zella confided in Atto about her glowing mark and how no one else could remember seeing it. Atto smiled and said, "This isn't the first time we've met." Zella, confused, listened as Atto reminded her of a boy who had given her shiny stones when they were 10. "That was you?" she exclaimed. Atto nodded and they both laughed. Over time, their friendship deepened into love. One day, they shared a kiss, and suddenly, Zella felt a sharp pain in her shoulder. She later discovered a crack in the glow, realizing that intimacy with Atto was dimming its effect. She speculated that deep, emotional connection might remove the glow entirely. Eventually, the glow faded, and she was overjoyed. Soon, Zella became pregnant. Their families, who initially opposed their relationship, had no choice but to unite them. Zella opened her own designer shop, and her glowing mark disappeared completely. However, Atto developed strange features, wolf-like hair on his right arm and fish-like scales on his left. The villagers started calling him the fish wolf and mocked him, claiming Zella's unique gift had transferred to him. As Zella's pregnancy progressed, she grew weaker. When she finally gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, she passed away 30 minutes later. Atto, heartbroken, named the twins Zell and Ella. He built a statue of Zella in front of his father's castle. 6 months later, the villagers suddenly regained memories of how Zella had saved them multiple times, erasing their memories each time to keep her powers a secret. They deeply regretted mistreating her and marched to her tomb to pay their respects. The village's community center was named after her. Atto never remarried. He raised his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. His twins, Zell and Ella, possessed the gift of interpreting dreams and were inseparable despite years of rivalry. Atto was buried beside Zella, and his descendants lived in harmony for generations, preserving Zella's legacy forever. Subscribe for more, and thanks for watching. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment and be the first to share.